talked about you doing really extreme lengths to keep Inspire running. Like, what keeps you going?
So, like, my main goal is for guys to have a platform to get to the next level. I love talent development. My favorite part is to take somebody and give them that platform. You know, with pro wrestling, they're all independent contractors, right? They're all on their own. So we don't make anybody, but to give them that stage to show who they are and to grow on and to be seen, that's the thing that keeps me going, because we've been very fortunate to work with a lot of people that have made that journey.
There's Biss. How are you on this fine evening?
I am good, man. I am good. Getting very excited for April 28th for sure.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about how Inspire AD. What was the origin story behind Inspire?
So, I used to work for a company called Anarchy Championship Wrestling, and it kind of pains me that it always starts there, but it's just kind of the natural progression. That's where I originally got most of my experience in the wrestling business. Towards the end of 2012, like I always say, 2012 was like my most miserable year of wrestling. I was really kind of disengaged from it. I was frustrated with how things were going. And basically, towards the end of 2012, early 2013, I left Anarchy Championship Wrestling. And my original goal was that I wanted to just have, 3 shows with my friends, 3 shows that were just that I put on my way. And then that was going to potentially be it. That was the big goodbye. There were 2 other people that helped out, that were there from day one. And that was Josh Montgomery, was a independent wrestler from the Dallas area, more of the like outskirts of Dallas. And he put in the initial investment money to start Inspire. And then Max Meehan, who is still with the company, had a lot of good access to local buildings, had booked music at Beerland on Red River, and had creatively done like screenplays and written some scripts for commercials. So connected with Max to, hey, how can you help me get a building to do these 2 shows? And he was very interested in the creative side. So that was sort of the trade-off. Hey, let me try the creative. I'll help you out here. So that's sort of how the group started, right? And we booked the first show, and I was like, well, if no one shows up, that's it. The first show was the July 7th, 2013. And about 100 people showed up, right? So,
Wow.
Yeah, it was kind of surreal, because you're sitting there and you're like, well, I don't know if anybody's going to show up, right? But we had about 100, a little bit over, for the first show. So then we originally were like, all right, 3 months in a row, 3 shows, let's see how it goes. Well, right away, we're like, no, we need more time in between. So I think the next show after that was like September. And then there was another show in like November, right? So we had some time in between, and they all 3 went well, and people showed up to all of them. So it just kind of kept going, right? So that was my mindset. Max, I know from the beginning, was like, all right, he's planning for like 20 years, right? He was the long-term, like, this is going to last forever guy. And I was sort of at that point just like, okay, let's just see how it goes. And it literally, if people hadn't have shown up, that's all it would have been. But people kept showing up, and, we've been very, very blessed that they've showed up for 11 years now. This July will be 11 years, which is crazy. Like, my original, idea of 3 shows, and that was like, okay, let's see if we can do 3 years, and then, okay, like 7 seasons, 7 years, that makes sense, let's try that. And it just keeps going.
Yeah, and do you remember the matches on your very first show?
I couldn't read you off the card. I know that the first match was James Claxton, Jared Wayne, the Void, who was one man Mike Dell, and there's a story there, so I'm going to get back to it. And I feel horrible that I don't remember who the fourth person was. It was a four-way. And Mike Dell had not been in Austin for a while. So the idea was that there was a Void in Austin without Mike Dell. So we put the Void character on Mike Dell, and we made it as generic as possible. So Mike Dell at that time was a huge baby face, especially in Austin. And he looked like a backyard wrestler. The shirt was baggy. It was like a baggy Under Armour shirt. The Rock Adidas button up breakaway pants. And he came out and they booed him. They booed the Void the entire match. And at the very end, he takes the mask off and does his Mike Dell celebration. Everyone went wild. So I'll always remember that. So the main event was Davey Vega versus ACH versus Chuck Taylor. Chuck Taylor was the first guest that we brought in. So Chuck was awesome. And that was part of we already had a tournament at that point to crown a champion. I was like, we're not going to make it to this damn finalist tournament, but okay, let's but yeah, we did three ways and then a 3-way to crown the first champion. And Davey Vega won that match. What else was on that show? That's crazy. Yeah, there's some people on there that we don't talk about anymore, right? So there's definitely some of that action. But yeah, that was the start. What I do remember quite a bit is I did do a promo sort of to thank people for coming, and I vividly kind of remember the front row and who was there. And I'll still kind of, if people come and go when you have a wrestling show, especially after a decade. But when those folks pop back up, or if I remember them from being there, I'll mention that to them even to this day. Like, hey, I remember you were there the very first show.
And that's nice too, to have like people still remember after those years. That must have been very rewarding, because like I'm sure, especially having a promotion, what were some growing pains that you've experienced as you go along this journey with Inspire?
There's always curveballs, right? So just the main thing was I had experience putting matches together in order. I had experience, talking to talent, booking talent. I had experience with buildings, and I had experience, with my main experience started with production. I was in the production team at Anarchy, so I knew how to set some of that stuff up, but I knew it very, DIY punk rockish. Like, okay, we're gonna grab these cameras and figure it out. So Inspire, we actually were able to work with like some actual professional production people that were like doing us favors. So like I would have conversations with them, and I'd feel like I was an alien with 3 heads. Some of the stuff that I would bring up. So it just having that, like, checking your ego and going, okay, like, you don't have to just make this work now. Let the professionals do it. But then also like marrying those worlds together, because like the real world and wrestling world don't always come together. And we had, I was the wrestling person in that office, and everywhere else, like I would be the not wrestling person, right? I'm not an active competitor. I trained for a very brief period of time. It was very clear I was not athletic enough to be the wrestler that I wanted to be. So I got into the production side, the office side of things. With our company, starting off, it was a lot of non-wrestling people. So like marrying those worlds together, there was a lot of growing pains. And we got there, but like we also don't have a traditional office structure that most companies have. So just getting people used to that structure and who's in charge of what at a show, there was a lot of growing pains with that. But we pushed through, and people learned, and they got more experience, and it got easier and easier as we went.
And especially and I'm thinking about this because I'm working in production. What was when that growth happened with Inspire and having that 100 people grow into where it is today? What would be that moment where you realize, wow, this is very big? Like, do you remember that moment, whether it's in another Inspire show? It's like, oh my God, there's so many people here.
Oh, there was an ecstasy of gold the main event was Ricky Starks and Chuck Taylor, or that was a match on the card. I don't even remember if it's main. But we got to the point where the building was starting to mention that we might have to turn people away. It was at Marquesa, right? That we may be, pushing the limits of the fire marshal. Now, wrestling in general, we put a big ring in the room, and then there's a different number, right? That number is not considering that there's an 18 by 18 ring, right? So we're already kind of flirting with disaster when you're packing a room that full. So for them to be like, hey, we need to start looking at this, we may need to cut people off at a certain point. That was the first, like, oh shit, okay, this is actually popping off. Like, this is good. And then, like, just creatively, when we had Chris Hero in 2014, it was him and Ray Rowe, and he reposted the match, and it got a lot of good reception. I was like, oh shit, people know who we are. That was kind of like, oh, this is cool. And the third one would be we did a joint show with GCW right before the pandemic, and like just the crazy crowd that was held over there, and everybody in the Blue Genie at that time. That was kind of like, oh shit, okay, here we are. Yeah,
and it's funny, like, Empire's a big venue, especially in downtown. Like, was that a case of like Inspire molting and going into this new skin, especially with the Empire Control and Garage?
So the Empire Control and Garage was actually one of the first buildings we looked at in 2013. It was extremely close to where Anarchy was running. Because after I left, Anarchy was still running. They still ran for a while. So, but believe it or not, most of the people over there will think that I'm completely bullshitting you. But it was too close to where they were at. It didn't feel right. There were also at that point, it hadn't been built up to what it is now. So there were some other things that factored in that would have added cost. Once we came back from the pandemic, we were running pinballs. They actually reached out to us to say, hey, is this something that could work? It was actually a different building, but Empire is under a management that manages multiple venues downtown. So we looked at the other building and it didn't work out. And that was where they were like, well, what about the garage? What about Empire? And we did not know at that time that they had put the tent in, right? So we thought that would be an outdoor venue. And it is. Like in the summer, you very much know it is. But with the tent, it has that cool vibe. It's right there on Red River. And it just looks Austin-y. I think when we walked in that room, we were like, this is awesome. This is spot. So, we had to like iron some stuff out, but when you're negotiating, sometimes they're like, okay, whatever it takes, we're going to make this work. We just don't need them to know, but whatever it takes, we're going to
exactly.
Once we walked in there, we were pretty dead set on making it work.
Yeah. And I was thinking about this. You mentioned the pandemic. I'm sure everyone's been hurt with the pandemic, both medically and as well as socially. How did the pandemic, how is that a hurdle and a growing pain as Inspire was starting to launch? Basically everyone shut down. Like what was that hurdle when the pandemic came around?
So the pandemic hit. We had our first ever pop-up show at South by Southwest that year. That got canceled. We were doing the after party for David Arquette, which was a huge gift for us. We lost that. And then we were going to do our first WrestleMania weekend as part of the Texas Forever show. And that was a huge bucket list for me. I attended the Ring of Honor shows in 2008, WrestleMania weekend, flew in, went to the Dragon Gate went to the Ring of Honor shows to see the Dragon Gate talent. And then, hold on, bear with me. I don't think this will give you motion sickness.
Okay.
There's my Dragon Gate towel from that weekend.
Wow.
So huge weekend for me. So like stuck with me for a long time. So that was a huge opportunity, and then that disappeared. Some personal things on that weekend I had planned, so the pandemic was a huge gut punch. To add in, like, one of the biggest shows we had was the GCW weekend right before it hit. So we felt like we were rolling. At the same time in Texas, Kiefer and New Texas was starting to come on. Heavy Metal was picking up their steam. Sabotage was running regularly, and we were working with all those promotions to Mysterious Q used to call it the latest weekend, right? We would have like 4 different shows all on a weekend with like guest talent coming in and being on all the shows. So we had this really good thing going, and it just came to a screeching halt. So I remember as it was coming up, I was like scrambling to be like, okay, let's just record a shitload of matches at the school, and like, okay, we'll do this in 2 weeks. And then it was like 3 days later, okay, no, we can't be around anybody anymore, right? So it just, like, as you're planning things, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to get through this? It'd be a couple months or something. It becomes more and more serious, right? And, eventually just the whole world shut down,
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because like everything got shut down, like even like the bigger promotion. Now, of course, they have their contingencies, they have their own backups, but having those like unplanned moments where everything gets affected, like how did you manage to go through the pandemic knowing that, hey, we have a promotion, we still have to entertain our audiences and fans? Like, how did you manage to overcome that?
I mean, honestly, it was at that point that we were right around 7 years. So I was like, all right, maybe this is a sign that this is it. Maybe we just stop, right? So I was at home and I was watching a lot of wrestling, and it made me realize how much I missed it. And at some point during that time, I just said, you know what? Screw, I've spent my whole time in the wrestling business trying to think what my exit is. Like, what's the point where I stop? And I'm like, no, this is what I do that I enjoy. Like, I'm going to do this for as long as I'm able to do this. Like, I'm never going to think that way again, right? However long or whoever will let me be part of this, I'm going to do this until there's nothing left, right? So that kind of like just drove that home. And then like creatively, you start to creatively, we all steal from somebody, right? It's making sure you steal from the right people. So just watching old stuff and being like, well, wait a second, we could do this. There's a whiteboard right in front of me. And at one point during the pandemic, there was 6 weeks of television plotted out on that whiteboard.
Yeah.
Now, another thing that happened during the pandemic was the speaking out movement too. So all of a sudden names off of that whiteboard were crossed and things just changed, right? But constantly being in that mind frame of, okay, what's a different way that we could do things? What's something kind of different that we could do? And then constantly keeping my ear to like the the CDC, and just saying like, okay, what works? Then when they started to have wrestling shows and having the sanitation stations and being like, okay, they're running shows, but this doesn't look right to me. Like, this needs to change, and just having my finger on the pulse and being ready, just being like, okay, when this is right and we can do this safely, let's pounce on it. Let's go. Right.
And do you remember the first show that you organized when Austin was starting to loosen? Do you remember the show that happened after those restrictions were loosened?
Yeah, so our first show was an outdoor show, right? So we ran at the Yellow Jacket. The Yellow Jacket gave us some money to run a show. We had some money left over. I did a Lucha Libre show for a very affluent golf club for their like Cinco de Mayo weekend. So very, very rich clientele. And I brought as legit of Lucha Libre talent as I could organize. So like just the juxtaposition of Lucha Libre wrestling happening, to this like golf crowd that had no interest in it happening, right? Like, so they busted their butts. They tried to entertain them. They were not interested in being entertained by us, but I got a nice little check off of it. The guys got paid, and then some of that money helped to go into the Yellow Jacket show. So we actually were able to do a free to the public show in an outdoor area, an outdoor open air area. So that was our first like kind of step back into it. I also I worked some of the New Texas shows on commentary during the time, so I got to kind of see how that worked. And then I also was going down and I worked one of the heavy metal tapings, and then also was going down to the heavy metal shows just to support and see what was going on and seeing how they were handling things. So by that point we were comfortable, but we still weren't comfortable with like an indoor situation. And then the show after that would have been the WrestleMania Dallas show. And basically I took out a loan and ran that show because, damn it, I was going to check that off the bucket list. So
Right.
if you're wondering how much money we made, we didn't make any, and I lost quite a bit, but it was worth it for my bucket list. Like, and that show, the main thing I can say there, like, there's the viral clip Luigi Primo from that show, which is crazy because like that's not really my style of wrestling. I think that was the match where Max was like, okay, I want to get this on. And it's like, okay, cool. And the rest was like my playground. And the one thing that went viral was that match. But I got to do Gary J versus Brian Keith on that show, which was something I really wanted to do. So I was really pumped to be able to have that match on there. And yeah, so I checked that off my list. So I don't have that itch to ever really do WrestleMania weekend again to run a show. But it was a lot of fun. It's an interesting environment to be in, and I did enjoy being part of it all.
I'm curious too, because like I'm seeing a lot of clips from you guys, and how has social media, and I'm sure every promotion uses social media as their tool. How has that helped contribute to what you guys are doing? Of course, attendance is one thing. Like, what are some things that kind of make you notice having social media as that tool for you guys?
Yeah, so we all agree that Twitter or X is a cesspool, right? Like it's just the worst. But I can literally post a ticket count on Twitter and then see my PayPal notifications come in. So it definitely is getting out to people. People are definitely seeing it, right? Because if I get in there and I say, if we're down to 9 front row tickets left, I go, hey guys, there's only 9 left. All of a sudden I'm seeing people buying tickets, right? So it's definitely reaching people. And then, Facebook targeted ads are one of the main ways that we advertise, so I think it's, a lot of kind of the older school guys kind of like, oh, you can't just post on Facebook. Well, you can put a flyer out there, but then somebody has to physically keep that flyer until it's time for them to decide to go to the show.
Right.
If you have an invite on Facebook or you have your flyer up on Twitter, someone can pull that up on their phone, their little computer in their pocket the day of, and know exactly where they need to go, exactly what times it starts. They don't have to hold a piece of paper or write it down from a gas station or however, it used to be done. So it helped. It's just easier to reach more people, right?
Right.
So, but it's a tool, right? It's how you use that tool.
Yeah, because I remember one of the first Inspire shows I went, I was there live. It's funny how that triple threat between Epi, Brick Savage, and Cavens, it was a big event from my standpoint in the audience. Now I checked X, I followed all of them. I did not expect to see it in the millions with their posts. It's crazy how like social media has been such a huge factor, like to even with indie promotions and all that. So it's kind of nice to see that it's a tool, but also you get to see the impact that people have, because the comments people were rioting. Like it was such an this is awesome moment for like 5 seconds, and he didn't expect that to blow up.
It's never the one that you expect. Like
Right.
the Luigi Primo clip from WrestleMania weekend. There's another part of that match that's like, to me, I was like, this is the funniest, craziest thing I've ever seen in a wrestling match. But it's just that little clip of him doing the pizza, and that went crazy. So you never know what is going to click, because like, it's 2024. We've seen everything. You've seen everything 3 or 4 times, right? So it's just that, what is that one thing that's going to like just go crazy, Yeah.
And we're going to go back to, and we talked about you doing really extreme lengths to keep Inspire running. Like, what keeps you going?
So like, my main goal is for guys to have a platform to get to the next level. Like, I'm a huge wrestling nerd. Like, you can see in my background, there's a ton of wrestling shit. There's Captain America up there. I'm a huge nerd. But the other huge passion of mine is sports, right? I love talent development. My regular job also involves developing talent and developing people. So my favorite part is to take somebody and give them that platform. With pro wrestling, they're all independent contractors, right? They're all on their own. So we don't make anybody, but to give them that stage to show who they are and to grow on and to be seen, that's the thing that keeps me going, because we've been very fortunate to work with a lot of people that have made that journey. So just to keep giving that platform, and in an almost an egotistical way, because there's a ton of great promotions out there, but just that, like, okay, if you stop, maybe that next person is not going to have that platform to get out there, right? Like, okay, well, if you stop, the world's not going to see Houston Hendricks, right? So, something like that kind of keeps you going and go, well, fuck it, let's find a way, Yeah,
it's interesting you brought this up, and we're going to have Dustin on a future episode for this week. And Dustin has been doing his side with his grind while at New Texas. When you decided to have that call to join Inspire, what led you to have this decision to have Dustin on? And we're going to talk about his main event with Dan, as you can see over there. We're going to have him that Sunday. Like, how did that factor to him joining Inspire?
Yeah, so we knew that we wanted to do Dustin and Danhausen by that point. So to me, there was me and him in the ring together was a fun little thing, because in Austin, I'm very much a babyface, right? And Dustin is just so purely babyface and so easy to love. I wanted the crowd to have that moment where, like, the issues between us and New Texas almost was uncomfortable for a second, right? It'd be like, well, shit, we don't want this, right? But I just wanted to tease it just enough to get that feeling on their mind, and then to be able to deliver that speech. Because a lot of what I said in the promo was the reason that we wanted to do it, right? Dustin embodies a lot of what we believe in, right? From a sports standpoint, like, I'm a huge Steelers fan, and like, what makes a great Steelers player is also what makes a great Ravens player, and they hate each other, right? And it was sort of that same deal. The promo was, I mean, I hate using wrestling lingo on this type of stuff, but it was a shoot, right? Like, a lot of it was how we felt, and like, we want this guy to be part of Inspire. We don't want you to look at Dustin every time he comes out and goes, oh, that's the new Texas guy. We want him to be a Texas guy, right? We want him to be one of those guys. So that was the main part. And just to give him that moment, I haven't ever really welcomed somebody into the roster like that before. And he's such a special talent. Like, I thought that it was a cool way to kind of showcase him and point out how special he really is.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, the reaction that Dustin had, it was like elation. It's like a release, because like he didn't expect the response, and he was taken back, but he was delighted to be in Inspire, and
Yeah.
especially now, when we're facing with Danhausen, and we're actually, let's talk about Danhausen too. Like, how did Danhausen wind up being announced over at Inspire?
We got to go a little bit back. We got to go back to like 2015. We had a very, very talented young lady named Angela Slang, who would compete for us. And she was from St. Louis. She had a long standing feud with Delilah Doom. And at one point, for reasons, she had to move to Michigan, to Detroit. So, she was very popular, but you can't always do a flight for somebody at that level, right? So she got a carload, 2 people. It was herself and the blue chipper, Donovan Danhausen from Michigan.
Yeah.
So Donovan Danhausen in blue trunks and, very much a rookie, came down for a few shows. And then, he moved out to, I believe it was Florida, but he went his way and she went hers. And we had brought him back one more time. I think him and Jason Cade tagged for one more show when he was in Florida. But then all of a sudden, the Danhausen character starts developing, right? And we wanted to bring him back as Danhausen a few times. And for whatever reason, either there was an injury or, Ring of Honor went exclusive and said, okay, no, we're not going to do any indie shows with you, or okay, now you can, but okay, now it doesn't work out. So because AEW contracts, you can, I think basically anybody for the most part can work independent date.
Right.
But once he announced that he was going to, we reached out and started working on it. So, yeah, well, I hope that answers the original question, but yeah, like basically it was just the right time. And that's really as far as I'm willing to go into it before the show. I am 100% willing to come back on and go deeper after the show and we go through some of that. But yeah, that was basically like, okay, now's the right time. And then Dustin was, as we talked it through and did the business of the match, Dustin became very obvious the person we wanted in that spot.
Yeah, because it's interesting with the teaser. I marked out. I'm not even, because when you mentioned very nice, it was myself and another gentleman jumped up. I was like, I know this is going to happen. Very nice. And when you dropped the very evil, I just literally, I've never popped in a while. And it's like, I was just like jumping, and hopefully it didn't bring an awkward reaction. But I was at that moment because Danhausen has been such a unique character in wrestling, and especially how he's been through to where his prominence is today. It's nice to see him in Austin to be that Danhausen character, and it's nice to have someone of that caliber over in Inspire.
Yeah, definitely. Like, and that's the fun part of it too. We want to bring the best of Texas, but then we want to bring the best of the best just to like, see where we stack up from time to time too, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because I am part of the Danhausen Fanhausen on the Facebook group, and I announced it as soon as awesome. you had the announcement. And there was one guy, one of the fan houses, like, "Oh, this is in Texas? I didn't know until now. Thank you for sharing." Because now they're aware that they had the announcement. They just didn't. I won't say where, but they weren't sure where in Texas until I dropped the announcement. So it's nice to have, and it goes back to social media being a tool. Because if that didn't get announced, they might have been like, "Where is he?" And it's like, and seeing that big of an event.
Yeah, and you brought it up too, like the falling brick and falling, that's how people, I call it cross-pollination, right? Okay, right. So you're a fan of New Texas, and then you get to know Stephen Wolf, but now Stephen Wolf's tweeting about Inspire. So now you're like, okay, let me check out this Inspire thing, right? Or you're a fan of Brick, and now Brick's from Inspire, but now Brick's going to New Texas. So now maybe you go, okay, well, what is this New Texas thing, right? or there's tons of really good promotions in Texas, and we used to be very competitive with each other. But the more good wrestling there is, the better it is for wrestling, because we all grow the fan base. There's all a chance that we grab that person that's never been in independent wrestling and they come to our show, and then they become an independent wrestling fan. I'm much more excited about people becoming independent wrestling fans than becoming Inspire fans, right? Because then once you open up that door, right, they can go to Corpus Christi, they can go to Waco, they can go to Houston, wherever there's good independent wrestling, right? And I may not be interested in bringing in Matt Cardona, right? But somebody might love Matt Cardona. So if Corpus is bringing him in, you still have that, it's a long drive, but you still have that chance to go see him, right? Or, if Corpus isn't interested in bringing in Danhausen, and they are, I guarantee you, Texas Wrestling Cartel is, he gave me a lot of hell when I announced it. But you can come to Austin, right? So, and we're growing the fans more and more in each town if we do it that way. So,
yeah, and it's interesting how, especially with Inspire heading, like, what are your goals coming into this current year? What are some milestones that you'd like to reach with Inspire as a promotion?
Yeah, so Sunday, July 7th is 11 years. So I would like to survive that long. That would be awesome. You ask it, and like right now it's a week before the show, and it's always like this grind of like, holy crap, how am I going to make it, right? So there's sort of like this short term, like, okay, just make it this show and then we'll figure out from there. So I'm trying to fight that mindset to also that I have a lot of goals for the long term. I think Texas in general is primed to, as a whole, really blow up. It's the size of a nation. Texas is the size of a nation. There's a lot of great promotions here. There's more good talent here than there's ever been since I've been doing this. And that includes when Starks, Keith Lee, Sammy Guevara, and Ray Rowe were all here. Like the level of good talent and the floor has risen so much. Like there's enough good talent for Texas to really blow up. And that's sort of what I'm looking forward to. There's a bunch of little one-off stuff that I would really like to do, and I'm hoping to achieve this year too. So I think as a community, there's a ton of cool stuff that we can do as big goals. So I didn't really give you like an Inspire answer. Like Inspire, the goal is to survive and advance, right?
Right.
11 years. I want to stay on top. We've never promoted a show with less than 100 people. So I don't see that ending anytime soon, knock on wood. But just keep doing our thing. And then as, at a kind of a bigger picture, I see Texas really blowing up in the next 3 years. And I just want to make sure that happens, make sure that we keep advancing in the right ways.
Yeah. And it's always forward progress, especially. And I noticed, especially after the pandemic started to loosen, we got to see all the wrestling shows kind of gather slowly. And I've never seen the boom until probably like a couple of years ago, because a lot of people who are sheltered in their apartments or their houses, like they didn't really have, they have WWE and AEW, which is still a great avenue, but having these independent shows and having that hard time of like, man, when am I going to see Dmitry Alexandrov again? Or when am I going to see this, until the pandemic started to loosen and all these announcements were starting to pop up after Travis County and Austin saying, hey, we can try it with this capacity. Everyone started filing.
The biggest thing there was just, there were people, it was a nice mix, right? There was a good mix of things, of people that had taken a step back and were not being active. And then the people that were like, okay, where can I wrestle? I'll wrestle in front of 12 people I'll wrestle in front of 3 people with masks. Like, I just want to wrestle and keep getting better. T. Ray Watford did a lot of work during that time to get himself better. He was on a short time period, right? he started very late in his life. So like he didn't have time to wait 2 years to not really wrestle. So he was going out, he was wrestling in front of nobody, just a camera. He was wrestling in front of 20 people spread out as far as they could get him. And he really grew. So when we came to the end, there was a lot of creative options too, because you had people that had been almost on ice. And then you also had guys that had grown in that time period and were completely different wrestlers than they were before. So they may have wrestled each other before, but now they were completely different people. So you had all new matches to explore once that hit. You also had deathmatch wrestling like blew up during that time, weirdly enough. Like we're in a pandemic and deathmatch wrestling blows up. How did that happen? How was that the thing? But like that, you can't kill deathmatch wrestling. Like
Right.
Vita fan, like got me into Japanese wrestling. Like you can't kill it; it will never go away. So then you had new people doing that, so that was like exciting. And then people were coming in off of being on ice, and well, I've seen everybody doing that. Let me jump into that. And I feel like it's kind of died down a little bit now, but like that got us through. Yeah, you just had all these new guys that kind of, they weren't held back because there was 100 different people trying to get on one show. It was like, okay, these are the people that are going to grind and they'll wrestle in front of whatever camera they can get in front of. So you had these new stars and these new kind of names to match people with for sure.
Exactly. And the Evil We Do will be on April 28th over at Empire Garage and Control Room. Tickets will be on the show notes, but I wanted to say thank you so much, Biss, for having you on. And honestly, like, and especially with Inspire, my first show was that was like early or late last year. And I got into this wrestling kick because my very first show was in Mission Pro, but then I was checking socials and I think that was Maya was in a match in Mission, and then she had the story of like, hey, Inspire Wrestling, let me just take a shot. Little did I know, I think that was the first match that I saw with that viral video, and it's like, wow, this is legit. I was hopping off my seat. So and especially with coming into 11 years, that took a lot of work to really get to where you're at today.
Thank you, man. I appreciate being on. I think I told you in person, like even before I was working production at Anarchy, I started, before it was podcast radio, I think was what it was called, doing similar type of stuff. So like, yeah, stuff like this people see, and then they'll ask the question. It's like cross-pollination. Like you said, I'm sure it was one of those posts where they put both posters on the post, right? Like that's that cross-pollination where you're like, okay, I know Mission Pro, and like Mission Pro is great. Oh, here's this person I like, and they're going to be here. You get almost that little bonus, and then it's that earworm where like now here's this other person, and here's this other person. It's the beautiful thing about wrestling. It just keeps going and going.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to end our conversation with this, and I always do this with all my guests. And the World Health Organization listed adolescents between the ages of 10 and 19. Now, people who grew up in that age range tend to pick things up along the way. Now, if you're in the same room as young Biss at age 18, what would you give him as advice, or what would you like to talk to him about?
You're beautiful. I think especially men, right, of that age, we bag on each other, right? It's the thing. But like I would tell young me, like, you're more beautiful than you think you are. Like, you're more handsome than you think you are. Right? Like self-confidence. So yeah, for sure. I think that's a cool question because, yeah, definitely. Like it's something I think about a lot. I'm able to get in the ring now and talk to 200 people, and I'm very confident in myself now. But back then, I wish I was a little bit more confident. So I would definitely, that would be my words of advice. I think 18-year-old Biss would be disappointed, but like that's what I would definitely. I would be looking for like keys to success and like what year I was in the main event WrestleMania or whatever. But that's the advice I would give for sure.
All right. Awesome. And I have nothing left to give. you have the floor. Where can we find you? And pitch us the evil we do this Sunday.
Oh man, I am the worst promoter ever at pitches, but I'm gonna do my best. Like I've been working on this thing for the last 6 weeks, so like I'm like, how would you not just want to jump on this? But I understand, like if you're not well informed on it, the matches on this show, and we haven't released the full poster yet, so I've got to be sort of careful. But Maya versus Yamashita is going to be amazing. That's one of her own personal dream matches. Stephen Wolf versus Exodus Prime are going to go out there and do things that you've never seen other people do, right? What else have we announced? The three-way, which, I mean, Will Alday has announced he does have a torn bicep. He will be out. But Little Evil and Danny O'Ryan are two of the hottest wrestlers in Central Texas, if not Texas alone. Little Evil may be the most technically sound wrestler on the independents today. I really would like to see him up against some of these other technical wizards to prove it out. But my money's going on Little Evil. And then Danny O'Ryan's just, he's a supernova, man. Like he's so young, he's so smart. And I think he's going to be a huge deal. And at least those two are going to go at it. We haven't figured everything out yet. But if those two go one-on-one, you're going to see something special. And I haven't even talked about Danhausen yet, right? So that's everything before Danhausen. Like, it's your first chance to see Danhausen do Danhausen in Austin. I'm very proud of him. I'm very excited to have him back in downtown Austin, in Empire Control Room. It fits like glove. And then Dustin Wynn, like, I'm burying the lead, but Dustin Wynn has had 3 shows with us. Like, he's phenomenal. He's such heart and such spirit. It's going to be a great mix to have those two in the ring together. So I don't know what else I can say to you. Grab your ticket. Front row sold out. I think second row sold out as I was sitting here. So double check. Get you a GA ticket. I don't want to be in that position again where the building comes and goes, hey, we got to look at not letting people in. Get your ticket. You pre-order it. Make sure that you're in that building. You pre-order, I'm going to make sure you're in the building, right? I might have to sit you on top of like the concrete wall before you get in, but we're going to get you in there. All right.
So cool.
So, it's going to be jam-packed. I'm Biss Says on X, and then all the Inspire social media. Eamon Patton, who was our play-by-play chair forever, still leads our social media, and thank God he does, because I would be lost without him. If you see my Biss Says, like you see the typos, you see the crazy grammar, like thank God Eamon takes care of that stuff. But yeah, any of the socials gets you where you need to be.